This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome everybody to this week's episode of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me as always, my guy Adam, the Jock Strozinski. On today's podcast, we got to talk about the greatest roast in the history of comedy roast that I watched late night Sunday. My jaw hit the floor regarding what was being said on my television. It was crazy. Got to talk to my guy about, is comedy back? Is raunchy comedy back on Netflix? Is the PC era finally over? Craziness. And we got to talk about these Detroit Tigers. I mean, when you go through a stretch of games where you can't play offensively, you have a bad PR situation with your negotiations with television providers, it's just been a bad week, especially with the reveal of those special uniforms. I think it's been reviewed quite poorly. Basically, only the media liked the uniforms. You can kind of get a sense why, and we'll talk about that as well. And then finally, on the podcast, got to check in a little bit with the Lions ahead of rookie minicamp. What are we going to check into this week? I'll be out there Friday for the open practice that is open to the media. We'll finally get a chance to see just a little bit of the 6 draft picks that the Lions selected. So I'm curious to see where the Lions still have holes. Should they be addressing some of the wide receivers that have been moved around? You heard earlier this week on Tuesday, Tyler Boyd has signed with the Titans. He was a name that people in Detroit kind of were clamoring for. There's other names as well. So we'll talk about all of that. Because I don't know if you saw it, but Sunday night, I knew that there was going to be a live roast of Tom Brady. So like a dumbass, I knew it started at 8. I didn't get to sit down until like 10:30. And right when I sat down, I'm like, okay, let's check this out. How's this going to go? Who's going to show up? And it had a big time feel. They had Kevin Hart hosting it, a bunch of comedians that are known to be able to effectively execute this. And Tom Brady, within the first 5 minutes, you were like, oh shit. Kevin Hart's talking about crypto losses, weddings gone wrong, divorces, and you're like, holy shit. And in each and every person that went up there tried to, it was like a comedian roast competition. And Jeff Ross is known for this. He's one of the producers. He got Tom Brady. He said a day later that he's been working on getting this done for about 3 years. Rumors are Tom Brady got paid like $30 million to sit on this thing, to sit there. And cuz when I say it was some of the craziest shit you're ever going to hear. The comedians were calling Tom Brady gay. They were making references of shit that he could be doing with Julian Edelman. It was so out of pocket. Then to end it, okay, after 2.5 hours, you had Bill Belichick trying to tell jokes. You had Bill, and you had distinguished guests there. Robert Kraft is sitting there. You got family members there. And no holds barred was the best way to describe this. Then you have, finally, you have at the end, I didn't know this, but maybe I haven't watched too many roasts, but I know the concept. The person getting roasted, I guess, gets a chance to go up there and do his thing. Tom Brady gets up there, drops a hammer on Kim Kardashian, drops the hammer on everybody, drops the hammer on Bill Belichick, making reference to his 6 a.m. booty call ring video. It was utterly top to bottom for a 3-hour event. It kept my attention because of how many times my jaw hit the floor. And cuz we don't pull no punches here. They were making Aaron Hernandez murder jokes. Tom Brady made a 9/11 joke. They were making jokes that you don't ever hear anymore in public. And Adam Carolla has been screaming for years that this is what comedy is saying things that make you uncomfortable but are sarcastic. And if you're a shit talker, and I'm a shit talker, everybody knows it, in fun, in jest, if there's something I know about you, I'm going to bring it up in a sarcastic way. If you're a shit talker, it was a shit talker's dream. It was like boys in a locker room pulling no punches. I could not believe what I watched, cuz. I don't know if you had a chance to go back and watch it. Watch it again, because the jokes that were told were so way over the line that it is mesmerizing what the hell was aired on Netflix. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's I've seen a couple of these. I've not seen this one. I've seen parts of it. I've seen snippets of it. But these roasts are usually pretty intense, pretty crazy, and they basically go right for the jugular. But you said earlier in your opening monologue here, is raunchy comedy back? I'll tell you that it never left. I'm a huge fan of Netflix comedy specials. I love guys like Jim Jeffries. Bill Burr is one of my all-time favorites. There are Nikki Glass. I have a little bit of trouble getting into some of her stuff, but all of her stuff is about anal. So, like, if you like raunchy comedy, it's there. You just got to go look for it. You got to know who to look for. The roasts are oftentimes, they walk this fine line of being sarcastic, being dirty, and being cruel, and sometimes even hurtful, which it's all done in good fun. So I think they're a lot of fun. I think they're great. I haven't watched one in quite a long time, actually. I used to watch them all the time. They used to be on, I think, Comedy Central back when we were younger, all the time. But you're right. Jeffrey Ross is a huge part of these. Jeffrey Ross really takes these things to the next level. I think there was a point in this one where Jeffrey Ross made a joke, and I believe it was about Robert Kraft or maybe about Bill Belichick, and it seemed to irk Tom Brady just a little bit. It seemed like Tom Brady got a little bit upset with it, but that's what these things are there for. And the funny thing is, the person getting roasted, a lot of times when it's a celebrity like Tom Brady or an athlete like Tom Brady is, they'll have a bunch of different writers working on their material, and they go up there and they just have to deliver it. And as long as they can deliver it, it'll be really, really good, and it'll be funny. And it sounds like Tom Brady kind of crushed it. So I'll have to check this one out. I did not see this one in its entirety. Like I said, I've seen clips of it, but have not seen the entire thing in its entirety. But they're a lot of fun. If there was a Detroit-related athlete, or if there was somebody in the Detroit sports sphere, who would you want to roast? Who would you want to go after? Who would you want to make fun of?
Yeah, you got to check it out. I mean, it was so over the top, and I'm curious to get a sense if you'd ever do it if you were a high-profile individual. I think the best one right now live would be Dan Campbell. I think he'd get the most crazy people coming up there and just talking from maybe people affiliated with the Cowboys, people affiliated with the Lions that are more buttoned up. Could you imagine Jared Goff busting jokes on Dan Campbell about stuff that he said or done or referenced?
Could you imagine Rod Wood?
Yeah, could you? Right, exactly. And you got Sheila in the crowd, and talking about Dan Campbell's junk or anything like that, or other kind of references. Yeah, there were references made to junk, all that kind of stuff. Man, it was something where I look at it, and when I asked that question on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, people were actually in the community. You guys are nasty. You guys are like, they want somebody up there that they actually want to say nasty things to. And one of the most popular answers that people wrote to us was Matt Patricia. They want Matt Patricia in that chair so that people can be like, Coach, you dumb MFer. I can't believe you called Darius Slay this to his face. You ruined what was great. You were nowhere near Jim Caldwell. Then you have Jim Caldwell come up there, and he can be like, it's really tough. 9-7 is not good enough, but I think you guys barely won 9 games in 3 years. And would that deliver some lines? Or you have Sheila come up there, and you're just like, man, I thought you guys would bring the Patriot way, not the 1984 New England Patriots. I thought you guys would bring. That would be some kind of funny if she put a zinger out there, and she'd do it too, because of how funny she can be and how lighthearted at times the players could be. But Jared Goff as well would be a fun candidate too, because he's so laid back, and these quarterbacks are those that kind of like it to keep it buttoned up. I think they would be hilarious, those that would kind of say stuff about his fiance being part of a Sports Illustrated and all her travels and stuff like that. Robin the Cradle, because she's a year or two older than him. Because I got to ask you, if you were a high-profile dude, would you do something like that, even if they paid you $30 million to have your – and because when I say deep, dark stuff, like people were like insulting him, calling him gay to his face. They were talking about, his wife doing disgusting things to the guy that she's currently with. It was rough. And Tom, was a good sport about it, but they did not pull no punches. And I'm talking about, like you said, Nikki Glaser is somebody that is very raunchy. She brought out the raunchiness. You're talking about someone's mom. You're talking about someone's wife. You talked about Aaron Hernandez in a joking manner that you typically don't see. It was so crazy that we typically don't talk about stuff like that, what we see on Netflix on this show, but it was so out there that when you see it, you're going to be like, holy crap, it's 3 hours of just line stepping. For $30 million to have your life exposed in that fashion where the deepest, darkest stuff, look, man, I don't know if I could sit there and have people comment on my wife, my friends, stuff about me being a psychologist. You know what? 30 million, I gotta pass. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be there where I could sit. Maybe for an hour I could do it, but for 3 hours of just 40, literally 20 people come up there talking, it was crazy. I couldn't do it.
I would totally do it for $30 million. Come on. Imagine what you could do with $30 million, bro.
I know, right? 30 million.
No, I would do it in a heartbeat. If I had to pick somebody, though, it would definitely be Matt Patricia. I'd like to tell him how crummy he is at life. But no, man, for sure I would do it. And the thing is, you have to know going into it what it's going to be, right? If you go into it thinking that people aren't going to come at you, aren't going to go after every aspect of your life, aren't going to go and kind of like try to hurt your feelings, then you're not paying attention. You're doing things wrong. But for $30 million, man, yeah, I would do it for $1 million. I'd do it for $100,000. Whatever. Right. You want to roast me? Roast me. Go ahead. I don't care. Shit, you roast me on this thing all the time. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
People roast me on Twitter often. I don't care. It's what it is. Yeah. Come get some. It's whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Matt Patricia would be hilarious. Could you imagine Dirty Slave talking?
Oh, that would be great.
That would be classic if one of the former Lions would talk about a coach that nobody respected instantly. It would be wild. Could you imagine then you have Bob Quinn as a special guest just being like, damn it, you cost me a job. People, I blew out a coach that was successful. You could even have Bob. And what was funny is when you see these roasts, the targets of the jokes were not only Tom Brady. The comedians were trying to one-up each other. It was like a roast competition, whereas the comedians would start with Tom Brady, mention him, and then they just start ripping on each other. It was so funny, the stuff that, because they're all friends. So they all know the stuff about each other that they can bring up. And it was so good. They were making, religious references to Jeff Ross. Oh man, Drew Bledsoe trying to do that was funny. Like I said, the only one that really didn't hit the mark too great, the two were Randy Moss and Ben Affleck. But everybody else slayed. I mean, Julian Edelman, Gronkowski was out of this world. But cuz the thing that made it special was Bill Belichick let loose. He went up there and he was like, I kind of had a saying, and I hope I don't ruin it, but it's just funny when you see it live. He goes, I had a saying, do your job. Rob Gronkowski, I see what you're doing on Fox 2. Don't do your job. Can you please do someone else's job? And the way in which he delivered it was so funny, and everybody just cracked up because they're like, holy shit, this buttoned-up serious man is cracking jokes on Rob Gronkowski, who was kind of the target of the night. But everybody was laughing at how funny Bill Belichick was trying to slay and be sarcastic. But then he got his, and people, Julian Edelman, I'll save it, he took his time, and he waited his opportunity to say, hey, I got something for you, coach, for all the shit you said to me. And so did Tom Brady. So, yes, it's worth your 3 hours. Trust me. You'll want to watch it twice because you're going to miss some things. It was well produced, and I wonder if this is going to be something now that's done. 30 million's a lot. I wonder how they can ascertain or with the budget like that, how they end up making money, if they're going to do it once a year, twice a year. But holy cow, if that's the level, if that's the standard, it's crazy. It is crazy what was accomplished in those 3 hours. And I can't wait. When you see it fully, message me. Let me know what you think. What was the nastiest joke? Because people are start coming out. Aaron Hernandez is the mother of the child is like, hey, I still have a daughter. Aaron's daughter could hear this. Giselle's not happy. That's when it hit the mark where they were saying some things about hiding money, about her cheating, about stuff that she could be doing with this guy. It's crazy. But check it out. 3 hours on Netflix, The Roast of Tom Brady. It's being talked about all over the sporting landscape, as well as what's being talked about in Detroit is what the hell is going on with the Detroit Tigers offense. Not good enough, just falling further behind the Guardians. And it wasn't a good week for the Tigers. When you look at getting swept by the Yankees, you look at the offense just really not delivering on any consistent level. You see Spencer Torkelson, who's a former number 1 overall pick, does not have a home run. Does not have a single home run at the time we're recording this. And it's just been disappointing. And then you have the uproar over the television deal between Bally Sports, Detroit, and Comcast. And just like everybody said online, you got to be really, really in the mud if you got people supporting Comcast over Bally Sports Detroit. That's how bad you know it is. People hate Comcast. They hate Xfinity, the way in which it's delivered. And people are like, I don't care. Bally sucks so bad with their app. And I've been blessed being able to have Fubo. And I just have been rolling with that. And it allows me. But I'll say this. Even though I have the opportunity to watch Tigers games, I prefer to listen to it on the radio. Much more theater of the mind. I love what Jason Benetti does on television, but at the same time, it's tough to watch live. After a couple 30, 40 minutes, it's tough because there's no offense. A lot of line drives, a lot of disappointment, a lot of runners left on base. It's a tough watch, and basically all this momentum that you've gained, you've basically given up in a weak time when it was an opportunity that you had. You didn't need to get swept by the Yankees. You're wasting what has been an unbelievably stellar start to the season for the pitchers, and it's really good. It's competitive, but when you pair it again with an offense that is so defunct, so disappointing, that's all anybody's talking about. And we got to start with the number 1 guy, the guy that's expected to get 25 to 35 home runs this year, is still without a home run. Cause is it time? I mean, we got to talk about it because we got to talk about who's at fault, what's the solution, what's going on. Spencer Torkelson, I think, needs to go the way of Parker Meadows. He needs to go to the minors. He needs to get some confidence. And when people talk about no, let him learn this stuff in the majors, I say, I think with each at bat, with each game that he's getting hammered by the online community, I think it's hurting his confidence. You gotta slow down the negative press about Spencer Torkelson. Send him to the minors so he can get right. This is one of those. It's a major issue on the Tigers right now, where one of your star players that's expected to produce is not.
Is it too early to call him a bust? I was trying to figure this out before our show, because I don't know if you realize this. This guy is a negative WAR for his career, right? And for those who don't know, WAR is wins above replacement, and a replacement level player is basically a AAA player or maybe even a 4A player if they're really decent. And it's one of those things where you can get better stuff from somebody in your minor league system than what he's giving you right now. I know last year he had 31 home runs, but he can't scratch anything out right now. This guy couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And it seems like he has a lot of these seasons where he ebbs and he flows, right? And when he ebbs, it's great. Like I said, he was able to put 31 out the yard last year. But when he kind of flows, he flows down, and it's bad and it's long, and there are these prolonged droughts with his hitting. And this is what was supposed to be the calling card of this guy. He was supposed to be a big bat. He was supposed to basically be your JD Martinez. He was supposed to be that guy who could come in and rake the ball all over the yard for you. And this guy can't even get on base. Like, we're celebrating singles from him. That tells you where he's at. I like I said, I was trying to figure out if it's too early to call him a bust. I don't think so. I think this is what he's going to be. I think over the course of his career, he's going to be a guy that when he is hot, he will be hot. He'll be able to put the ball out of the yard. But for the most part, he's going to be a guy that struggles, and he's going to struggle a lot. And I don't think he's going to be a very consistent player. I don't think he's going to be a very good major league player. I think defensively he'll be fine. But again, when you drafted him and you took him as high as you did, you drafted him to basically be that bat in your lineup. He was supposed to be that third or fourth bat in your lineup that was supposed to get guys home. And this guy can't find anything at the plate. So maybe sending him down would do him some good. Maybe sending him down does get him a little bit of confidence. But I think this is going to be what he's going to be. I don't know how you turn this into something better. And look, I know the season is incredibly early, but you just kind of go look at his career splits. I don't think he's a great baseball player. I don't think he's a great batter. I don't think he definitely doesn't have a very good average, and his on-base percentage isn't very good. He's just a guy. And at this point, being a negative WAR, you can go find almost any guy to plug in at first base and give you more than what he's giving you. It is incredibly frustrating. Am I out of line saying that he's a bust at this stage in his career? I know he's 24. He's a young player, but what I've seen over the course of the last, 2+ years, I do not buy into him. I don't think he's going to be a good baseball player.
Oh boy, yeah, that's it's unfortunate with Spencer Torkelson because the Tigers need him. That's a guy that they need in that offense. So it's critical. That was the key that Scott Harris was. He warned everybody. He said prior to the season, "Hey, we are not going to go out and get big bats to give these guys at bats." So it's twofold. One, I agree that Spencer Torkelson is battling things. I do think that he has power. He has the tools. But at the same token, I think the Tigers and their coaching staff deserve a little bit of blame here. I think that they're not developing hitters consistently. You see guys leave the organization and do better, like Itzhak Paredes. It has the feel that it's a perfect mix of, hey, a player battling things, but not being able to. AJ Hinch and that coaching staff has not been able to take what the players have. And when Mark Canha is one of your most productive hitters, something's wrong. It's seriously wrong. And I think the solution is the solution of, hey, let's just ride it out at the big leagues doesn't work. Why did you send down Parker Meadows? It's the big leagues. You got to win games. And 35 games is a pretty good barometer of it's not a slump. Something's wrong. He's either not seeing the ball good enough, his timing's off, his confidence is low, his launch velocity could be better. You have fundamentals that could be, taken apart and looked at. And I think you can't do that in the majors because all the major league teams are just pounding them in the strike zone and blowing stuff by them. So it's disappointing at the highest level. You got to send him down. And to me, when you let this go on for, let's say he starts, I think the barometer of most slumps, you would start to get concerned around 20 games. You've let him suffer for 15 more games where he slid down the lineup, been taken out of the lineup. You've put him all over the place, and he hasn't hit. So you got to send him down. You have a time to be able to work on mechanics. You could work on lesser competition and build your confidence so that you can look at things. And it's much slower paced where all eyes in the baseball community, at least in Metro Detroit, are on Spencer Torkelson every at-bat. And it's getting highlighted. It's getting talked about nationally. So you got to slow that train down. I think AJ Hinch is doing a disservice to a player to let him go out there and struggle consistently. I think that I was hoping that the double that he got the RBI in the finale against the Yankees would turn things around, but because it's a barometer when that park in Yankee Stadium, 314 down the side, where if you can just get the ball in the air, there's a chance it's going to fly out there, and you weren't able to do it, and it sucked too to see. And look, it's Detroit. We know we're not going to have Juan Soto and Judge and guys making $40, $50 million a year. But it sure would have been nice to have another bat that you could have brought in here that would have been a contributor, someone to, hey, a reliable 300 hitter with 20 to 30 home run power, maybe like a J.D. Martinez to kind of show these guys a little bit of the ropes. You don't think J.D. Martinez chatting it up with Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson and Parker Meadows would have been something? And then at the same token, what sucks is collectively, Colt Keith is a tease. He isn't like the real deal Holyfield. You know what I mean? You paid him all this money, and he's a developer. You know, you are allowed in baseball to have a guy come up and just start swinging for the fences and contribute. It does happen. It doesn't happen too often, but it stinks that the lineup collectively, it's an unbelievably brutal watch, and we're all fans. We want to get into it. We want to be able to see, we want to be able to see this team. But you know what I don't want to see? I don't want to see this team over the weekend in the Detroit City Connect jerseys. You even have a release of an alternate uniform that is so. Look, I tried to just.
This organization can't get out of its own way. I swear to God.
I tried to be positive when I did my review. I said 5 out of 10, but I agree with the critics that said it looks like a soccer jersey. It looks like it's a jersey that got run over. It's not cool. It's not indicative. I know it's supposed to be different, but it has no remnants of anything that's Tiger related. So I'm disappointed at the highest level regarding what I don't know what to think about the City Connect jerseys. I think it's disappointing at the most disappointing level.
Yeah, look, I'm totally underwhelmed by these jerseys. These things were supposed to be kind of sweet, supposed to be kind of special, and I think the most special part about them is some of the intricacies that are weaved throughout the jersey. Like, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. It's a very automotive driven, I use that as a pun, type of jersey, but they're very underwhelming. Like, I'm not going to go buy that jersey. I'm not going to go buy that hat. I don't like any of it. I don't like the color. I don't like the scheme. I don't like the logos on it. It's one of those things where, like I said, it's incredibly underwhelming. You had the ability to do something very iconic with a very iconic jersey and hat, and this is what you gave.
Oh.
Yeah, I feel like you could have tweaked the Detroit jersey a little bit and made it interesting, made it different, and you could have captured some of that retro, some of that essence. Instead, what you get is this total remake. This feels like it's like a mock-up. And they're like, hey, so we're thinking about doing these new jerseys, and this is what we've come up with. And they're like, this is all you got? And they're like, yeah, this is kind of as good as it gets. And they're like, well, we got to have something, right? And they're like, yep, you do. And they're like, well, I guess we'll take this. To me, it is incredibly underwhelming. Like I said, I like some of the subtle nuances of hiding stuff throughout the jersey. But here's my thing. Unless somebody is right up on you, you can't really see those things. Unless you buy the jersey yourself and you're holding it in your hand and you're looking at it, you're not going to really be able to see those things or tell those things. So to me, it feels like it kind of fell flat on its face. Legitimately, the Detroit City Connect jerseys to me are Spencer Torkelson. They're a bust. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, and the best way to put it is, would you pay $85 for that? No, exactly. I wouldn't.
Dude, it looks like a jersey you could get at Walmart for $14.99.
Yeah, exactly. And there's what's crazy. And I always say to myself, okay, and I've always said this since the start of the podcast, trust your gut, say things, you're not overly negative. When I first saw the hat, I said, damn, that looks like a hat I see on 11 and DeQuinder when I get gas in some of the at some of the English toffee that I roll by when I go downtown. I'm like, Jesus. And I'm like, okay, just relax, stop being like that. And then that's what all came through on the review. They're like, the hat's terrible. It looks like a gas station hat.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, look, they tried, and it's not popular online. And all you could say for this week before we start talking about the Lions is the Tigers, I believe, put out, or it was them or Bally Sports Detroit, they put out a tweet earlier on Tuesday, and it was like, it's us against everybody. Come check us out this weekend. It's us versus everyone. And all the comments under are, it's not really us against everyone. It's kind of you against Chris Ilitch. Can you get him to spend some money? And the offense blows. Can you get Spencer Torkelson to hit a double? It was so bad. And, it's just one of those things where when things and that's kind of how it goes with public perception. When you're losing in baseball, is a long season, so when you get into kind of this losing streak and not play well, it can be brutal. And it's reflected at Comerica Park. I've been there a couple games myself, and there's barely 15,000 people there. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of one of those things where it's another lost season, And Scott Harris told you, hey, we're not spending money on this team, so you get what you get, which is
here's the thing. This is what's so frustrating about it, right? So, like I said, this organization just can't get out of the way of its own mess, right? So you have the issue with Bally's, and you have the issue with Xfinity, right? And when people start siding with Xfinity, it's like you're siding with Satan. You're siding with the devil. Everybody hates Xfinity, and it's for a good reason. But everybody hates Bally's more. So, like, the Detroit Tigers are on a shit network, and now that shit network is at war with a shit cable provider. And then your season is now going to shit. You started the season so hot, and you are having some of the best pitching that I can recall for the Detroit Tigers in years, and since probably the 2012 season when they had David Price, Verlander. I think Scherzer was on that team. You had like Cy Young winners up and down that roster. That's like you're having outstanding pitching from these guys that I think going into the season, you were kind of like, yeah, the strength of the team's going to be pitching, but I don't really know what to expect from them. I don't know how good they're going to be. These guys are lights out right now. These guys who are flaming everybody are giving you quality innings. And these are innings that if you had an offensive baseball team, we could be legitimately talking about the playoffs. But you have zero offense. Spencer Torkelson can't hit his way out of a wet paper bag. You've got guys up and down this roster who are sub 220 averages. You've got guys who you're looking at and you're like, hey, can you just maybe get on base? And they're like, oh, we'll try. Look, Riley Green's been decent. But other than that, I mean, what do you got going on here? You've got a bunch of no-name guys, a bunch of guys who are kind of doing this at this elite level for the first time, and they're trying to figure it out. There's not like there is a solid veteran presence who has hit north of 300 in their career for any extended period of time. Good hitting, it kind of has this trickle-down effect, right? So if you can get a couple guys to get on base, everybody kind of starts feeding off of that, and you're able to, I don't know why, but you're able to see the ball better. All of a sudden, the ball becomes the size of a beach ball, and you're able to hit it all over the park, and you're able to get runs in. This team can't get runs in. This team can't do anything to help this pitching staff out, and this pitching staff is going to war for you every night. Again, this organization can't get out of its own way because the owner doesn't want to spend money. The GM thinks he's the smartest guy in the room and has basically told you that, hey, we got guys, we're going to do it this way, and we're not going to go out and spend money. It is incredibly frustrating to watch what they're giving you as a product. It is absolutely atrocious.
Yeah. What's tough is with this team is you always feel like this team has potential to do some things, but without the guidance and support from management, from the coaching staff, it stinks because it's a clear issue. And what was your solution to it? Your solution to the problem was to go out there and double down on youth that hasn't been proven, and it stinks that Parker Meadows and Colt Keith collectively, along with Spencer Torkelson, can't hit. That's 30% of your lineup, and you have the albatross already with Baez, and that's just a given. So it's so bad because it's just and what's awful juxtaposed with the fact that this pitching staff is performing at a high level. It is such a downer that against good competition like the Yankees, they were able to make the plays, and you had some moments where your pitching even was let down. So not a good week. But moving forward, the schedule gets a little bit, look what's unfortunate. You play the Guardians, who are top of the division. I think you got a weekend series with Houston. So it's going to be a tough hill climb these next couple series. So let's see next week when we check in with the Tigers just to see where they're at, because at the time we're talking, they're only one game above 500, and it could fall the other way pretty quickly. And you want to keep this because, you have a prime opportunity to get people's attention with the Lions offseason kind of slowing down now ahead of mini camps and things like that. You get an opportunity maybe to grab some attention. But unfortunately, this week, the Tigers, all their attention was pretty bad. And let's hope they can turn it around in the next 7 days. Because I'm very curious now. This week, the Detroit Lions will reconvene. The rookies and some select second-year players will show up at Allen Park for the weekend for a rookie minicamp. It's going to be great. We'll get our first look at Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, Giovanni Manu, Sione Vaki in Lions uniforms. It's going to be very interesting, intriguing to see the rookies and how they conduct themselves and get them out on the field and running around. And I'm very curious. Now that minicamp is starting, what are some one or two things you're going to be curious to learn about this weekend? And I think what's interesting, too, is now that the draft has happened, you're starting to see teams kind of round out their roster with some free agents and things like that. The Lions have made an interesting signing, bringing back C.J. Moore. I'm curious to get your thoughts on bringing back a guy that was suspended a year for gambling. I think that's crazy. But I think when you say holes and what this team needs, I wouldn't say there's clear holes. I would say there's room for growth and depth at this point. And the position that everyone's looking at as wide receiver, I can agree with that. I think that C.J. Moore addresses the safety that you're concerned about. I think he's a special teamer that everybody respected. He made a poor choice, and hopefully he did enough to prove to the Lions that, hey, I'm not going to go out and gamble at the casinos, which are very readily available to all these players. So hopefully he can mind his P's and Q's, not bet on the Lions this year, and he can stay out there because special teamers and maybe a guy that can get some reps at safety as well. I think wide receiver is a spot that you have some talent. You have guys that can fight. Would I like maybe a Zay Jones added? Maybe. But Tyler Boyd went to the Titans. I'm curious to get your thoughts on where this football team is at right now post-draft. I think it's an exciting time to see these young players, how they're going to fit. But I think that they could round out the roster with a talented wide receiver for Jared Goff.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's why I was pretty upset when I heard the news that Tyler Boyd ended up signing with the Tennessee Titans. I think wide receiver, you want to see one more come in, right? Just a guy to add a little bit of competition to the room, maybe a veteran who can come out and just, I don't know, just give you something. Look, I like Donovan Peoples-Jones, and I hope that he performs. But kind of going off of what we've seen last year, and I get when they got him, they were in a playoff race, and they were trying to do a lot of big things, and they basically have switched the narrative of the Detroit Lions. But he didn't give you a lot, and he wasn't giving you a ton in Cleveland. Now, I know he's got the ability to do it, but he wasn't doing it. And look, I know we all like Cleve Raymond. I think Cleve Raymond's a really good player. I think that they've given him quite a bit, but I don't know if Cleve Raymond's reached his ceiling or not. I kind of feel like he might be there. What you see is kind of what you get. And that's good, but I still feel like you're lacking at the wide receiver position. So going out and grabbing somebody else, like I said, like a Tyler Boyd, a guy who has a lot of big play potential, a guy who can do things in the slot. He can do the stuff with those intermediate routes. He's a veteran who has played at a very high level, and I feel like he still has a little bit left in the tank. I know when he was in Cincinnati, they've kind of, I don't want to say phased him out of the offense. He just wasn't used as much in the offense. But all that being said, he's still a guy who can go. So him signing with the Titans, a little bit upsetting. Especially for what he signed for. It was like $4.4 million, which honestly, it's a drop in the bucket. At this moment in time with free agency, there are guys out there that to be had who will contribute to your team. You can get them at a solid price. So I'm hoping Brad Holmes finds a wide receiver to add to that room. I'm hoping that he goes out and gets a guy that's going to compete and could possibly be your third wide receiver. Look, I'm not as high on C.J. Moore as you. I honestly, at this point, just bring back Quintez Cephas, too, while you're at it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of where I'm at with it. I would have liked to have seen them bring in, whether it be another cornerback, whether it be a nickel corner, or whether it be a safety, bring somebody else in for that secondary to kind of help fill that room out as well, add a little bit more competition, add a little bit more depth. And that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about depth, guys that can step in if he goes down, or if something happens to somebody else in the secondary, you got a guy that you can pull and throw on the team and roll out there and get something from them. But I feel like safety and I feel like wide receiver are two positions that they still need to address and that they still have to add to this team. And it'll be interesting as we get closer to training camp if they do that. I don't know if this organization believes that it's basically done right now. Like we're good until we get to training camp. So I hope that's not the case, and I hope that's not what they do. I hope that they are scouring and looking to add guys as much as possible. But that it remains to be seen.
Well, as we were talking, the Lions officially confirmed the CJ Moore signing, and they've added a relative of a former Michigan State Spartan. They've signed the following free agents: CJ Moore and defensive lineman Kyle Pico. As we're talking, I'm learning more about him. Relative of a former Michigan State Spartan. So, depth, competition, that's what's going to happen. A couple quarterbacks were invited to rookie minicamp to kind of throw it around. You need bodies to run the offense and run the drills and all that kind of stuff. So, always looking. And
do you think they find a guy? You know how they seem like every year Brad Holmes kind of casts this wide net on guys that he specifically targets and brings them in, whether it's an undrafted free agent or whether it's a guy that he just kind of, it feels like he picked them up off the scrap heap. And usually there's a guy or two that makes it onto this roster and contributes. Does he do that again? Or at this moment in time, is the competition level so high for what they've got going on that those types of players are going to be few and far between?
Yeah, no, it's going to be tough. I mean, the spot where you will get maybe some impact is a guy that's maybe on a last year of a deal that gets, moody and wants to be done by training camp, or some veterans that are 28 to 30. Like right now, Pico is 30 years old, played with the Titans, Raiders, and Broncos. You get those guys that are veterans that can be, individuals for competition and to upgrade certain spots. So, impact would be probably just before training camp. Post June 1, where cuts are made official, and then right when the cuts start at training camp, near the end of training camp, when all the official cuts are made, you can sift through a lot more. So I don't think so. I think at this point the roster is pretty good. I think there'll be names that get signed, but I don't believe there'll be massive impact. Like, you're not going to get a superstar like you did where you had a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson available at this point in time last year. I think you'll get somebody, but it'll be role players, somebody that potentially comes in and really either boost some competition or as a depth piece. I just think that the impact you got was in the draft, and the impact you got is in the free agency where you upgraded the secondary and defensive line. That's where the biggest impact is. The rest, maybe at the trade deadline, will be something fun this year. If the Lions are lacking, will Brad Holmes give up some capital next year to move up, and will he sacrifice some capital to get a guy that's proven that has some impact? So we'll see. It's going to be fun to see for sure this weekend. I'm curious to see Terrion Arnold now. He's got that big personality, bro. He's kind of, not that it's bad, but he's kind of starting to flash a little bit of that Dion, where he wants to do some music, wants to take his sayings and make it a brand. So I like that. It's kind of new age, but I wonder if that's going to clash with what the Lions like. Because Aaron Glenn is not about the high steppers, you know what I mean? And it feels like from just online behavior and just reading the way in which he conducted himself, it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that, that swagger, that booming confidence is great. And I love to see it. I'm definitely a big fan of that. I just wonder if that's going to play with the coaching staff, because early on, they kind of like to keep it professional. Maybe if he gets some pick sixes, any high steps, I think then Dan Campbell will allow that expression of personality. But Terrion kind of getting into the interview circle and wants to do his music, wants to talk about the Lank saying and make it something special. So I'm curious to see that. And I'm curious to see their swagger, because a lot of these guys, like an Ennis Rakestraw, are being talked about as being undersized. Mekhi Wingo. I'm curious to see their swagger and what their game translates like when they're out there competitively. So it's going to be a fun time. Like I said, now it's just off-season stuff, and you can follow along with All Lions and the Detroit Sports Podcast. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter, at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. It's going to be a fun time as we move through the Lions off-season, the Tigers, what the Wings, where they're going to shake out. I predicted just randomly the NHL draft lottery. I didn't go on anybody's site and see any maybe previews. I didn't do any of that. I just randomly guessed the 15 or 16 NHL teams that could be in the lottery. We'll see if there were errors made by myself. We'll see where the Red Wings fit in the draft and as they look to upgrade and make their changes. And the Pistons, we're just waiting to see when the president of basketball operations is hired, and we'll then add them to the mix because they're kind of a lost cause right now. Cuz I appreciate the time. The time flew by. I appreciate recording with you. I can't wait for next week for the latest and greatest episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.